Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Captain America issue number 6. Another badass Alex Ross covers, man. Between this and the Immortal Hulk, I don't know which cover to love the best. So, let's get into who actually made this comic book. Okay, here we go. A couple pages in. Winter in America, Part 6, by writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, artist Leinil Francis Yu. The inker, Jerry Allen Guillen. Sorry, did my best. Sonny Rowe is the color artist. Letters, VC's Joe Caramonga, and covers, Alex Ross. Variant covers by Marco Djurdjevic, another one by Butch Juice and Frank D'Armata. And the graphic designer is Carlos Lau. And of course, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon are the creators of Captain America. So Alexander Lukin is here, his wife. We get to see how his wife brought him back. It's interesting because they use Rasputin. I think that more stories that involve Russia and magic should definitely involve the historical figure of Rasputin because, holy crap, probably one of the most interesting characters in actual history. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude's a freaking comic book character in a world without comic books. That's what I'm talking about. And anyway, we see how she was going to go about bringing him back, and therefore why Selena is actually involved, why she took some of Cap's blood, all that good stuff. So we get a little bit of a backdrop, why they're doing what they're doing. This was a really good explanation issue, why all this crazy stuff is happening. Now, on top of that, we also see what their master plan is, the Russians, what their master plan is. So we get to see that they're planning on actually destroying the legacy of Captain America, the image that he has. Now, this is probably the perfect thing to go after the current events that happened in Secret Empire. I know it took a little while to get there. It's nobody's fault necessarily, or at least they didn't know how to capitalize on this, and they're leaving it to Ta-Nehisi to do that. But he took a little bit of time in order to figure all the stuff out, what he's going to do, what the plot is going to be, how to follow up on the Secret Empire storyline. I'm cool with this. Now, I'm going to finish up before I start saying some things that I disliked about the comic book. I love the idea that we're getting a Russian perspective on this. I think that I always try to, this is just from having been in the military for so long and always trying to see, the tactical plans back and forth and the entire strategy as a whole. Just in general, what people are going to say about this comic book, what people will think about the comic book, talking with people in my comic book store, and just in general, just in general, trying to figure things out. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say things negative, like, oh my God, he's just, Ta-Nehisi Coates with his anti-American agenda, just talking trash about America again, blah, 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 blah. Well, I guess that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, this is the way that Alexander Lukin and the Red Skull and all these, Lukin's wife, all these people on the, other side, how they would think about things. There's a reference to Alexander Lukin being a socialist in here, which isn't an entirely bad thing. The Russian socialist agenda, I guess you could say, if capitalism's an agenda, then I guess so is socialism in this regard. I almost kind of hope they would touch on it more, although I appreciate that the majority of comic book fans who aren't interested in economics aren't going to understand that. Unfortunately, there's going to be a whole lot of, the people who are going to be the most critical are the people who are more nationalistic than truly patriotic. A lot of times we confuse the difference between patriotism and nationalism. Ta-Nehisi Coates, from my understanding, is not a nationalist in any way, shape, or form. He is a patriot. He is someone who appreciates what America stands for according to the Constitution, according to, the way things are supposed to be, not going by, well, if we interpret it this way, or I believe that the forefathers interpreted it, we know exactly how everything in the Constitution was meant to be interpreted because there was vast amounts of commentary on it. We know a lot about our forefathers, the founding fathers of America. We know. Don't believe any of that propaganda nonsense that you get in all of cable news media that where they're just repeating verbatim what people say. Well, the Supreme Court needs to try and understand what the forefathers were doing. The forefathers, first off, were our forefathers. They're not us. All right, so we're going to interpret it. We should be interpreting it the way that we want to interpret it, or just, updating things. That's what amendments are for. That being said, we know what they wanted. Okay, so it's important to also remember that America, more than any other country that I'm aware of the history of, was built upon a revolution. So, yeah, we are people who don't stand for the status quo, any status quo. That's the spirit of America. And being able to write what other people would think about a comic book, about America, it's important to understand what other people think about America, because we are supposed to be that guiding light. Currently, we're not. We're absolutely not. We probably haven't been ever since Ronald Reagan came along. My opinion, my channel. Yeah. We slowly started to denigrate over the past 40 years or so where we were, where we're going, where we should be going, what we should be going towards. And that's where patriotism comes in. Understanding what the dream of America always was and where it's supposed to go from there. I don't personally see Ta-Nehisi Coates as anything but a patriot. The best patriots in the world are the ones who are critical. That's what Captain America is right now, according to the things that people are saying against Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I'm not even going to other people's channels to look at that. No. I see them coming over here. A lot of these guys are coming to my channel and saying, Ta-Nehisi Coates is this and Ta-Nehisi Coates is that. Yeah. Ta-Nehisi Coates does such and such and such, but Ta-Nehisi Coates isn't going to bow to the status quo, which is the whims and desires of corporate America. This is evident in the very corrupt system of bribery. Legalized bribery. Bribery sounds so illegal. No. It's been legalized. It's been legalized. 2 different Supreme Court amendments made corporate contributions to politicians, and therefore be holding those politicians to them, if they ever want more money, legal, which is a damn shame. And this is commentary on that. I hate to say this, but when you look at the most revolutionary people in America, even if you're just going to say the most revolutionary white people in America, give me liberty or give me death, you can claim who they were fighting against. Oh, they were fighting against the British. Now you're talking about fighting against us. No, we were the British. That's what needs to be understood. We weren't America fighting against the British. No, we were the British. We fought against ourselves. We became something else. We became something, as Americans would like to think, better. In many ways, it was. What Ta-Nehisi Coates says, in general, is really just stuff that's been repeated by the greatest leaders. You could even say the greatest white leaders that we've ever had in this country's history. This is our country's relatively short history, all things considered. I've got absolutely zero problems with anything that I've ever read Ta-Nehisi Coates saying. You want to quote something for me that you think is negative, I will be happy to comment on it. That's what the comment sections are for below. So I appreciate everything that is written here. And as far as I'm concerned, this is Ta-Nehisi Coates holding back. I don't think he should have. I definitely do not think he should have. This is not even a Russian opinion of us. More so than that, it is our enemy's opinion of us. Wow. Wow. There's so much I can comment on this, but I'm trying to keep it just about the comic book itself, if I possibly can. But yeah, I did like this comic book. I think we've had enough action in the comic book, bits and spurts of action. And aside from the people who are just going to hate anything that happens in this comic book, if Captain America goes and blows up Russia and takes a leak on them while holding the American flag in his other hand, you know what I'm saying? I still think people would sit there and complain about this because there are people who just don't like the writer. And it's a shame that most of the commentary that I see, specifically the negative commentary that I see about this character, the comic book, which should be about the character, which should be about the comic book, the plot, the story, anything, the art, the writing, it's mostly about the character of the writer, which is a shame. Which is a shame. That's why I find myself just simply responding to that more than anything else. But as far as the comic book itself, I appreciated getting a story where we don't get any answers. We only get a question, like, who murdered General Thaddeus Ross? I kind of hope this, like I said this before, I really hope this blends into the Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk comic book. I really hope that, I know Ta-Nehisi is a busy guy. I'm sure that Al Ewing is a pretty busy guy too, but I hope that these two can collaborate at some point and get a story together that they can, collab on. I think that'd be great. God, they're both touching on the exact same things for the most part, just different ends of it, different parts of the same chain of command. God, this could be great. But all that being said, I appreciate at least getting all the answers that we did on the bad guy's side. Wow. I guess that by issue 6, I should have expected that it was going to happen by now. I was willing to give it more breathing room for that. And I'm going to double down on a point. I love it when a comic book breathes. I love it when a comic book can breathe. Here's something that I don't like. When a comic book is exasperating. Breathing, exasperating, technically the same subject, but different general points of view. It's all about the respiratory system, right? But there are different aspects thereof. So I think that more than this comic book just breathing, I think that it's exasperating. I think that it's, I'm not going to say gasping. Gasping indicates a potential end. There are people who gasp, a lot. Asthma, people with asthma gasp. They're not dying. But people usually associate gasping with dying. Your last breath. This is not a last breath by any stretch of the imagination. No, rather, this is just a comic book that's kind of, feels like it's a little bit out of breath. I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. This comic book was slow. That's cool. I think that the next 2, 3 issues should possibly have a little bit more action in them. Well, actually, as far as this was concerned, there was no action in this one. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to have some serious action in a comic book in order to continue on. It is, after all, a comic book. And it's going to slow down the comic book, unfortunately. It's a funny thing. Like, when you think about what I just said, action slows down a comic book. But doesn't action get your heartbeat racing? Yes, but it's like pushing on a door. It's like the difference between cardiovascular and cardiopulmonary. You know what I'm saying? There's how much work is actually, how many joules were generated? Dude, slamming into a door that's not going to budge, or slamming into a rock, let's say that, slamming into a rock, boom, 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 possibly breaking, definitely bruising your shoulder, possibly breaking your shoulder, amounts to 0 joules of energy. I should say 0 joules of work being done. This is physics. 0 joules of work have been accomplished. Opening a door and walking through it gets more work done than slamming into a boulder. I equate action, especially mindless action, as getting 0 joules of work done. Usually. I like it when the action actually results in something. There's a goal to the action, and they actually achieve their goal, or at least find a new question. You know what I'm saying? Find the right question to ask. I like when that happens, but when there's just combat for the sake of there being combat, boring. But since there was no action in this one, and just answers and one new question, with based on the plan that the bad guys have, I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of action the next 2, maybe 3 issues. Positive action, good action, where actually leads someplace. That's what I'm kind of hoping for. I would be more than happy to see Captain America have to fight those people. Like, if you see the end of this book, they show the next issue. Looks like a scene out of the very beginning, the preludes, the road to Civil War, right? The original Civil War. I'd really like to see now. And I'm willing to go wherever this comic book goes. I'd really like to see Captain America have to fight those guys and get out of there and go on the run, go undercover again, working with Bucky. Bucky maybe, being told to bring him in and then having to lie. Very similar to what he's doing in the Punisher comic books, except most recently. The most recent Punisher comic book, no, he actually brought him in. But I would really like to see something like that. I think that'd be great to see him back, going underground again, not being able to be the face of America. Maybe darkening his uniform, blacking out that star, having to go more U.S. agent, the Captain, as opposed to Captain America. I would love to see something like that. I would read the hell out of something like that. You know, the bureaucracy working against the actual spirit of the nation. God, those are the best Captain America comics, in my opinion. I would love to see a return of that. I'd love to see the way that ta-Nehisi writes something like that. All that being said, the comic book does seem to be going a little bit slower paced than I would appreciate. I like that it's breathing, but unfortunately it's taking extremely unnecessarily deep breaths, in my opinion. That's just the feeling that I get now. And apparently I've had that feeling before, because it is, what is today? Today's Friday. Today's Friday, I'm finally getting to this comic book. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I wasn't excited. I usually read the comic books that I'm excited for first, and I was not as excited for this issue because it just, whatever, just because of what I've been reading, based on what I've been reading. I love the comic book. I'm just not in love with the comic book. I'm not married to the comic book right now. If the comic book were to end, I'd be like, man, that sucks. I really want to know where this was going. Okay, what else is out there? I wouldn't be ruminating over it. You know, I wouldn't be like, you know, kicking a can down the street talking about, man, like this is generally affecting my life, man. No, there are comic books that'll do that. If a comic book just ended, there are certain comic books out there that would do that for me. I'd be like, damn, crap, I'd have to take a moment. This would be like, you know, take a deep breath and, you know, go back to work as usual. More than that, what do you call it? This book feels light, all right? And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean that actually. All the comic books that came out this week felt thicker. They actually felt heavier. I pulled this one out of the board and the bag. Pulled this one out of the bag, and I was like, oh, it's a very thin book. Well, it's not thin. This is the Christmas season, and a lot of the books are very thick. There's a lot of issue number 25s out. There's a lot of, you know, issues where they're doing bigger, like 32 pages instead of standard 22 pages, or, you know, 48 pages. They're just doing a lot more pages. Some of them are 60, 80. There's a lot of big, thick books out this week, and this one is just your average book. Here's the thing about that. If you are a sane person, it's strange in this world, right? If you're a sane person and you're in the middle of an insane asylum and all the doctors are gone, you're the only sane person. Guess who's the person who's not? Normal. You see, normal is relative. In general, we say normal as the, you know, around the world. You know, the normal thought process is sometimes that can result in the status quo again. I'm not a fan of the status quo. They're the ones who tell you be quiet and accept. You know what I'm saying? Right into your congressman. Don't get up and get mad and organize and fight against the system, because then change might happen, like with what happened in France. They asked for this, they got that. You know what I'm saying? You could try and argue against that. They weren't civilized, damn right. And if it means a lack of civility to get something done, I 100% support that. It was the French who helped us in the American Revolution. Let's not forget that. Give me liberty, or give me death. So, and there was so much more than that also. What do you call it? In I'm gonna say an Arabic word because I feel that for me at least it has more gravity. The word adi. All right, you have to use an ain, the letter ain for this. It's not an a, it's an ain. Adi. So not adi. Adi. Kind of almost like you're saying a twice. That's the best way that I can enunciate it. Adi. It means normal. It can also mean good. It can also mean good. I'm not choosing to use that word definition. That definition of the word. I'm choosing to use the word normal. Adi. This comic book, size, the weight, everything, it's addy, all right? Addy isn't necessarily used for the word basic in Arabic, but I'm going to choose to modify the word, not a very modifiable language, but I'm going to choose to anglicize the word a little bit and make it, you know, and give it a slightly skewed definition. I'm going to use the word basic, all right? This comic book feels addy to me. It's supposed to be the status quo. This is the normal size of a comic book, right? The 20, 22 pages. But in a week where everything else is so much larger than this one, where I pull this normal comic book out, this addy comic book out, and it feels light compared to everything else, this is the one sane person in the middle of the asylum. You get it? So I think that the best thing that they could have done to make this comic book better was to ask ta-Nehisi, to pay ta-Nehisi, hey, could you throw in an extra 6 to 8 pages? You know, for us. I think that would have helped the comic book tremendously, specifically in this week. Any other week, this would have been whatever, but right now, the books are just a lot thicker, and I think that this would have served its purpose better if the book were a little bit thicker, just for this week. Anyway, that's really all the commentary I've got on it. I did appreciate getting the story back. Something else I also appreciate is that this isn't a story arc where it's like, I'm hoping that there's not a new story arc next week. I'm hoping that we're continuing with part 7 of this story arc. Another status quo of comic book companies, the organization as a whole, is that, you know, arcs are supposed to be 6 inches long. 6 inches. There's Addy for you. 6 inches is Addy. It's supposed to be 6 issues long. And by them being 6 issues long, why? Well, not for any other reason than when they go to trade paperback, the standard is 6 issues. If you got 5 issues, well, the comic book's going to be a little light. We got to reduce the price a little bit or put a filler in there. The average volume of a trade paperback is supposed to be issues number 1 through 6, issues number 7 through 12, issues number 13 through 18, and so on and so forth. I hate that. I hate the standardization, the industrialization of comic books. It's not what I want. I would rather a free flow of ideas, not, okay, I got to think in 6-issue arcs. No, let the writer, let the artist think in story. Let them think that. So I hope that ta-Nehisi isn't going to fall into that. He doesn't seem like the type of personality who would. So I'm hoping he doesn't fall into that Addy mentality of 6-issue story arc. I want him to just make a damn good story. Much like Tom Taylor did with X-Men Red. There was 11 issues in that, well, 12 issues in that, and it was an 11-issue story arc. And God bless him for that. And I'm hoping I can say the same thing for ta-Nehisi. Write the story that you want to write. That's all. All right, guys. Professor Bell, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.